For this next part, I'm going to show you how to mark up your front and rear panels so that you can start working on cutting and preparing these. Now, you've got a simple measuring device with your speed square, and all you'll really need is something to draw a line with. I suggest you use a pencil, not a pen, as the pencil won't bleed into the wood and leave a permanent mark. Considering that these pieces here should be 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide roughly, they are all being installed with the grain pattern going vertical. If you install these with a grain pattern going horizontal, they might not fit exactly the way you expect them to. So the start of this particular part here, or the start I should say of your project, is to measure in 5 inches along the edge. So use your speed square to find the edge. Come to the 5-inch mark on your speed square as long as you remain on the edge. And where you see that 5-inch mark, go ahead and draw a small little line. Okay? Do the same thing on the opposite side here. Check to make sure that you're aligned with the edge. Find your 5-inch mark. And that's basically going to be the spot where the roof line drops to on each side. Now, the trick is finding the center. What you're going to need to do is actually find the exact center of this board, and considering that it should be 24 inches, 12 inches should bring you to the center. A standard 12-inch ruler will do. Once you've found the center, go ahead and make a mark. After you've made the mark at the center along the edge adjacent to where the corners were that you just marked, you're going to need to draw as straight of a line as possible from one point to the other. Now, your ruler's not going to be long enough if you use a 12-inch ruler to measure here. As you turn it, the ruler's going to be just a little bit shy. What's convenient here is you've got plenty of lumber available to make a nice straight edge. So connect the 2 points using that lumber, and go ahead and lightly scribe a line. That line, again, is the slope of your roof. Now, you're not going to actually attach your roof to the siding, but the siding is going to have to fit on the side of the roof after the framing has been finished. So once you've got those 2 lines drawn, you know roughly where your roof line needs to be cut. You can go ahead and use that handsaw to cut each one of these parts. Now, for the front and the back, you've got 2 different processes to follow. Both of them require those lines to be drawn, just like you see on this one below. But only the front needs a door opening. Now, the door opening has been left for you to cut because all of us might have a different sized pet at home. The largest opening size here is going to be 11.5 inches. If you remember, we've got the small wall sections on each side of the actual doghouse, and instead of it being actually 24 inches wide, the doghouse is really 23.5 inches wide, which fits inside these edges here. And that's why those sill plates that we had mentioned earlier are 23.5 inches long. So once you have determined how large that hole is, you're going to find the equal spacing from each side, whatever it is that you would like to make. Now, if you'd like to make it the maximum size, remember I said that you've got on one side here, out of 23.5 inches, you've got the 1 3/4 inches for the stud that's used as the sill plate. Then you've got a 4 1/4 inch sill plate for that front wall. So 4 1/4 and 1 3/4 gives us 6 inches. That's why that cap plate's 6 inches for the top. So if I take 6 inches off one side and 6 inches off the other side, remember this is 23.5 inches, that leaves us 11.5 inches in the center. Okay? So 11.5 inches is your maximum. If you measure in 6 inches, make a mark. Measure in 6 inches, make a mark. Now understand that the maximum height of your opening is relational to or correlates to the maximum height of the actual wall. Now, if you remember, the base is 3/4 of an inch thick, the sill plate's here. You've got an 18-inch stud, then you've got a top plate and a cap plate. So if I take 3/4 for the top plate, 3/4 for the cap, I come up with an extra 1.5 inches. That 1.5 inches plus 18 gives me 19.5 inches. Then I've got another 3/4 of an inch down here. Well, 19.5 and 3/4 is 20 and 1/4. Now, I don't recommend you actually cut the whole 220 and 1/4. What I'd really recommend is that you stick around 18 inches, unless you've got a particularly tall dog. And at that point, we might be getting a little bit too big of a dog into a little bit too small of a house. So try to stick to the 18 inches. It's going to give the actual material a little bit more rigidity instead of going all the way up to 20.25. That extra 2.25 inches is actually going to give quite a bit more rigidity to this entire panel. Now on the top, most dog houses have some sort of an arch because let's be honest, the back of a dog is not completely flat. So I recommend finding something that is round to use as a template, or if you've got a compass at home that can actually produce at least a 5-inch radius, which most standard math class compasses can do, go ahead and use a compass. Make your arc. Simple compass will do. Now, on the other hand, if you're struggling to find a compass and you really just need something that's round, you can use anything that is a round shape to create that arc. Remember, you're not being judged on how round the arc is that you cut, nor are you going to be judged on whether or not you're using part of the arc, like a cord cut across an arc, or the entire 180 degrees. So what I'd suggest, find a simple like 5-gallon pot if you've got it at home that you'd put a plant or a small tree in your backyard. Use that as a template. Or find a 5-gallon paint bucket and use the lid or the base of the paint bucket as the template to create your arc. Whatever you like. Understand, though, that the arc is going to be cut in multiple steps. And the basic handsaw that you've got is not designed to create a round cut. So I'll have to show you that in a later video. But the initial stage here, let's mark the material so we know exactly what we're doing with it. After you've finished marking the vertical lines and the arc for the top of the doorway, then you're ready to start cutting. Now, some variance may occur when you're building. So I'll warn you now, unless you are making a doorway that is definitely smaller than the framing assembly, smaller than the 11.5 inch wide, then you might actually wait until you've got the entire house structure done just for the cut of the doorway. Because when I mean there's variances, if you might have nailed something a little bit too close on one side or too far on the other side, sometimes that hole doesn't line up. And we really want this to line up. So again, if you're making a cut that's smaller than the 11.5 inch doorway, go ahead and cut that now. If you're not, and you plan on maximizing the opening for the doorway, wait until you've got the entire frame completed before you go to make that cut.